On Sunday, we had the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. There's a lot to talk about, but the main thing I really care about is Max versus Lewis. So Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton won. He got first place. He also got fastest lap, so he got 26 points, which right now means that currently Max Verstappen, who got second for Red Bull, they're tied with both 369.5 points going into next weekend. There's one race left this year, Abu Dhabi next weekend, and that's going to decide everything. I cannot wait. It's going to be, cross your fingers, hopefully very, very interesting, exciting. I would like it to come down to the wire. I'd be heartbroken if Lewis pulled away and won by like 20 laps. If by lap 20, with 20 laps to go, like Lewis is ahead by 14 seconds and it's over, that would be really sad. Or if like Max or Lewis, one of them doesn't finish and has like a gearbox issue or something, it'd be really, really sad and very, very heartbreaking. Now, there's almost a hatred growing between these two guys where Lewis does not like when anyone challenges him. Go watch the Formula One 2016 season where he basically had a lifelong friendship with Nico Rosberg that got ended due to the competitive nature and the way things played out and the way that Lewis Hamilton carried himself in those battles between him and Nico Rosberg. And look, Max Verstappen is not afraid to play dirty if he has to. He's the kind of guy, he's like, I'm trying to win. I don't care about being friends. I don't care about being liked. I don't care what fans think. I want to win a world title. And that's dangerous because when you have a guy who doesn't care what anyone thinks and will do anything it takes to win, he really will do that. And Lewis keeps taking digs at Max in the media, complaining to the stewards, and it's getting very dramatic and really spicy. It's been an intense battle all year, but it's getting especially chippy, as we thought it would. I mean, we saw all year they've battled back and forth, and it's gotten a little bit more chippy every race, bang, but it's just more and more intense, a little more touching between the two drivers as they go. And literally everything has been possible. They've used, for example, during a race restart, Lewis Hamilton decided to take as much time as humanly possible getting to the grid. So he forced Max Verstappen to sit there on the starting grid, allowing his tires to cool. And Lewis just took as long as he possibly wanted, meandering slowly, waiting till he pulled up and forcing Max to sit there on the starting grid. And Max has done illegal stuff, like the way he passed Lewis Hamilton a couple times, even throughout the year, just cutting Lewis off completely on turns. The reality is that both Max and Lewis are completely miserable to compete against. They will go to the stewards. They will make contact with each other. And they're actually very, very similar, which is why I think this is so intense. If they were racing other people who maybe weren't as bullheaded, but I think some of the most intense and competitive and bullheaded drivers where they will do anything to win. They don't care. You got Lewis Hamilton. I think Fernando Alonso is that kind of guy, and Max Verstappen. And now we got two of those guys against each other. It's going to be the way this ends this year is going to be really intense. And it's because they're very similar. No one's talking about that. They do, like, if you're a Lewis fan or a Max fan, you go, oh, the other one is terrible and wrong and complains or does this or does that. And no, the reality is they both do whatever it takes. And they're similar, which is why it's been so intense as the year has gone on. Now, the margins are razor thin. It's been nail-biting to watch because neither driver can afford a mistake or afford to have anything go wrong, a gearbox issue here or maybe a puncture there or you run wide into the wall. I mean, it's crazy how razor thin the margins are at the end of this year. And there was a moment where Max passed Lewis and it was illegal, so he had to actually give the place back to Lewis. And then Max slows down to let him pass, and Lewis rear ends him. And you're like, oh, no. And there are two sides, right? Lewis will tell you that Max is being dirty and it's bad racing. Max will tell you, so Lewis will say it's dirty driving. Max will say, I was just slowing down to let him have the position. Of course, he'll say it as innocent as humanly possible to get anybody on his side. Now, Max actually got blamed for the collision. The FIA gave him a 10-second time penalty after Saudi Arabia. Now, it didn't actually impact any of the race. It's a trivial move. So Lewis still won. Max still got second. But I thought that what really was happening there was they were trying to appease Mercedes and shut Lewis Hamilton up, who was complaining a lot, talking about how dirty driving, it's this, it's that. And I thought really what happened was, and it's kind of comical to blame Max, although, like, again, it didn't matter, so it didn't impact anything, so who cares? But I thought what happened from watching was that the FIA had poor communication between Michael Massey, the race director, and the two teams. They told Max to slow down and give the place back, and he did. They just hadn't yet told Lewis what Max was going to do. So Lewis wasn't prepared for Max to slow down and give him the spot back. That caused them to collide with each other. I think that's on the FIA for poor communication rather than blaming Max. But again, it's trivial, so who cares? Overall, this race, though, was a really big mess. I mean, it's a street circuit with drivers going full speed, and it's super narrow. So if anything goes wrong, there's nowhere to escape to. You can't avoid a collision. There's all these blank corners, again, at full speed. And there were 2 red flags to clean up the track at one point. There were constant on and off yellow flags and safety warnings, and you couldn't pass. And the track, I thought, aesthetically looked very good. It kind of reminded me, actually, it made the F1 cars, especially early on, look like toys, where you're like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And it looks like, kind of reminded me of karting or a video game or something. But in many ways, this track had really poor race design. With there's the place where Mick Schumacher crashed. It's like, there's nowhere to go. If you miss that turn or screw up at all on that turn, you're going to go into the wall, and then it's going to have to cause a red flag because you got to repair the wall, and you have to have that safe and ready. Debris was all over the track constantly. 5 drivers did not finish. Sergio Perez, Nikita Mazepin, Mick Schumacher, George Russell, Sebastian Vettel. All 5 of those guys did not finish the race. They DNF'd. And the race had so many stops and starts that it really, in my opinion, impacted some of the fun. I'm like, come on, can we just have driving and racing instead of, I wonder how many laps, someone can look it up, how many laps of this race was under a safety car with a yellow flag, whether it be virtual or not, where you couldn't pass. It's crazy to me. Now, here are the result after the race, here are the result of the standings and what happened. How do I even say that? This is the result of the race. There we go. English is hard. This is what the standings look like after Saudi Arabia. Max and Lewis are tied both with 369.5 points. Now, if they both DNF at Abu Dhabi next weekend, or I guess this coming weekend, then what's going to happen is that Max will win because he has more race wins, even though they're tied with points. And it'd be kind of, imagine if someone at the back of the pack, let's say Antonio Giovinazzi is like, I'm so sick and tired of Lewis dominating Formula One. And he just goes on a suicide mission to, cause a crash for Lewis Hamilton, something like that. That would be really interesting. And I don't know if funny is the right word, but it's definitely interesting. I don't know if that'll happen, but Bottas is third right now in Formula One with 218 points. He is actually, I think, secured third because in fourth place, you got Sergio Perez with 190 points. That's 28 points behind. You can't score 28 points in a single race, even if. So I think that must mean that Sergio Perez is secured at 4, or I guess Valtteri Bottas is secured in third in Formula One. In the constructors' standings, you have Mercedes with 587.5 points. Red Bull has 559.5 points. The DNF for Sergio Perez in Saudi Arabia basically handed Mercedes first place. It would take a miracle now for Red Bull to catch up and beat Mercedes. And third place, a similar situation. You have Ferrari with 307 points. McLaren, who has battled with them all year, is so far behind now. They have 269 points. It would be a miracle. It would be like, hey, both McLaren drivers get first and second. Ferrari doesn't finish for McLaren to somehow pass Ferrari. And even then, I don't even know. Is that mathematically possible? Probably. Yeah, because you have 25 plus. I still don't think that could even happen. So I think Ferrari has secured third. Alpine has 149 points in fifth place, excuse me. They've pulled away from AlphaTauri. Remember, a couple of races ago, AlphaTauri and Alpine were tied. And with Esteban Ocon doing so well recently and Fernando Alonso getting a podium, Esteban Ocon got fourth in Saudi Arabia. And Alpha is now 29 points behind Alpine. So good for Alpine. They've secured fifth place in Formula One. I'm really pumped for Abu Dhabi. Really the only thing left to figure out. The constructor standings are basically secured. I'm curious about Max versus Lewis. What's going to happen? How does this... It's up for grabs, first place in Formula One in the driver's standings. And I am praying it's a good battle to the end. I would hate for it to be a blowout or for one of them to DNF and it not be an interesting battle. I don't really care who wins, although I think I am rooting for Max. I'd like to see Max Verstappen win. It'd be cool to see someone dethrone the champion. But and I think it would be really intriguing for next year. Like, what's more intriguing, a Max Verstappen revenge tour after almost beating Lewis Hamilton, or Lewis Hamilton coming back to prove himself after losing to Max Verstappen? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's more interesting for next year if Max can win here in this race than Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, all I'm praying for, really, truly, is a good, interesting finish that comes down to the wire. If Lewis wins, but it's like it takes the final lap and an overtake or something, I'll be so happy. That's perfect. That's all I really want from Formula One is fun and interesting outcomes that come down to the very end.